Good morning and welcome back to the Thought of the Day. This week we are looking at Jesus in the Old Testament, and today we are looking at the story of Joseph. The previous 2 days we've looked at part of the story of Noah and part of the story of Abraham and Isaac. But today there are so many parallels between Joseph's life and particularly the end of Jesus' life through the 10 plus chapters that cover Joseph's life that we can't read them all. So we're going to do a bit of a whistle-stop tour and just pluck out some of the parallels that we can see. So the first one comes at the very start of Joseph's story as we know of it. And that is Joseph being sold into slavery by his brothers. They are jealous of him, his favoritism from his father, but also of these dreams that he's had that he is destined to rule over Jacob and his wife and his brothers. And so they sell him into slavery, but they sell him for 20 pieces of silver, which is the going rate for a slave at the time, kind of like 1900 BC. Similarly, Jesus, when he is betrayed by Judas to the Pharisees, who are jealous of Jesus, presenting himself as somebody who is, has a greater authority than them, he is sold for 30 pieces of silver, the going rate for a slave of AD 30, the kind of time when Jesus was going about his ministry. So there's your first parallel. They are both sold for the going rate for a slave. Jesus was slightly more due to inflation. Whilst Joseph is working as a slave for Potiphar and his wife, he is tempted by Potiphar's wife to sleep with her, but he resists. He refuses her advances. He resists temptation, and he doesn't abuse the power he's been given, because at this point he's like head slave. He's like runs the household. He doesn't abuse this power given to him by his master Potiphar. In the same way, Jesus is tempted by the devil in the desert, his 40 days in the desert before his ministry starts. And similarly, Jesus resists the temptation. He doesn't abuse the power given to him by the Father. As we move on, Joseph is wrongfully imprisoned. He is convicted of crimes that he has not committed and is thrown into prison. Similarly, Jesus is convicted of crimes that he has not committed and is taken into jail. While in the prison, Joseph meets two other prisoners, one of whom dies and one of whom survives and is set free. Jesus, when he is on the cross, is joined by two prisoners, one on his left and one on his right, one of whom dies on the cross by Jesus' side, and the other who dies but turns to Jesus in his last moments and is guaranteed salvation and is set free. Joseph eventually comes out of prison and rises up to be Pharaoh's right-hand man, second in command. Jesus dies on the cross, but raises out of that depth to ascend to be at the right hand of the Father. There are so many parallels between these two lives, and it just goes to show that when God allowed Jesus to die on the cross, it wasn't a last minute thrown together plan. It wasn't an afterthought. Things didn't get so bad that he had to step in and do something drastic. This was the plan long ago. This was the plan to the point where Joseph's life lives out this pattern to paint a picture of what Jesus will do in his last days. Just to finish some of these parallels, when the people who sold Joseph into slavery, his brothers, come looking for food after there's been a famine in Canaan, Joseph reveals himself and forgives them for the wrongs they committed against him. And he makes this claim. He says that although they intended it for harm, God intended it for good and has worked good in that situation. In the same way, Jesus, when he is up on the cross, the Roman soldiers and the Pharisees who meant to put him there for harm, he forgives them. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they've done. And he knows that God is working in that situation for good. God intended that to happen for good. Jesus' death on the cross was always the plan to enact God's good will. So next time you feel as though you've done too much wrong, you've gone too far to come back to Jesus, just remember that Jesus' death on the cross was always the plan. God works in bad situations, in harmful situations, for good. The story of Joseph shows us that and highlights another little bit of Jesus in the Old Testament.